Mediating conflict in the workplace is possible by having the proper training to avoid hostile situations that can occur in the work environment in the first place. Now, most businesses already have policies established to reduce harassment and abuse at a high degree within the organization. However, businesses that take the extreme measures by enforcing a zero tolerance policy for these things can provide reassurance to their employees um, compared to companies that do not have this type of policy in place. For instance, your employees will feel more secure, protected, and more acceptable to being honest and considerate of each other now that they know that their actions have consequences. Um, for example, say you have a company that does not have a zero tolerance policy established for conflict violations in the workplace. But let's say they have some point system or some other form of behavior management system, and you have an employee who's being harassed by another employee or abused, meaning that they're being overworked, poorly talked to, physically or emotionally abused, or some other form of high level mistreatment by another employee. Well, at best, the only thing this imaginary company can do to punish the employee at fault is give them a point or some other form of intangible discipline, which most likely the company cannot disclose with the affected party. Because there's rules. Companies can't disclose with other employees about other employees' information, which ultimately um, leaves the victim wondering if the company is taking the matter serious or if there's going to be any consequences um, for this. Yet, if the same company had had a zero tolerance policy in place, the affected party would be able to know that the company has the same morals as they do, and there will be some discipline that will not only resolve the situation, but prevent it from occurring again. Ultimately, the employee understands, hey, you get a very high level consequent, if not termination already. The next time you do it, you will be most definitely terminated. So, ultimately, and another thing, by having a zero tolerance policy in place, it cuts out the uncomfortable aspect of a manager or a supervisor having to have a direct one-on-one conversation with employee at fault or the affected employee. You don't, when it's kind of uncomfortable, like, hey, you need to get your stuff in order, or so it takes out that uncomfortable aspect. But for issues that are not always as obvious or considered high level, such as we just went over, like gossiping and tension between employees, there needs to be better manager and supervisor training to alleviate these issues when they arise. I say this because if these issues escalate to where HR is now involved, the first thing that HR is going to do is come back to the manager or supervisor and see if there was something that they could have did to resolve the conflict before it escalated to HR. And ultimately, it does kind of in some way add a blemish to their supervising and managing record. Yeah. Thus, managers and supervisors not only have a responsibility to make sure that employees are working effectively, but also they have an important role in conflict resolution. They're essentially ground zero, I guess you can call. You should be the first one to resolve the conflict if it gets serious before it escalates any further. And there should be more training to educate them on the importance of preventing hostility in the workplace and be able to resolve conflicts within their own groups before it affects the entire team as a whole. There's no way a group can be effective if there's some turmoil within. For example, where I used to work, the manager would often give verbal warnings. I should say, like, hey, could you do this? But it was never really enough to keep the workplace in order. I mean, managers develop relationships with their underlings, and they necessarily do not want to get them in trouble or report them, or they don't feel comfortable talking to them direct. It could be a little bit intimidated, or they have that friend element, like, hey, I feel weird telling you, get your shit together. Or sorry for the language, apologies. Get your stuff together, and then hey, let's go get a drink. So that may be a little weird, which brings us back to training. Training managers supervisors. I would recommend this as the corrective disciplinary action for conflict resolution. It gives managers enough guidance, strength, and a roadmap to resolve these issues if they ever escalated seriously. And I personally believe training is an effective way to prevent conflict, as it not only educates the employees and managers, but is an alternative to harsher disciplinary actions like discharging an employee.